Welcome to Passion and Purpose with Pamela, celebrating all things woman. I'm Dr. Pamela Hardy Shepherd, here to ignite inspiration through conversations that spotlight women's power and their journeys. Let's share our light, our stories, and create a space of celebration for every woman. Here's to embracing our womanhood together. Welcome to Passion and Purpose. We are so back, and we are with Louvenia Brevard, and we are so happy that she's here. So, Louvenia, before we begin our conversation about caregiving and dementia and difficult decisions families often face, I'd love for you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself out of your words first.
Okay, thank you, Pamela, for having me on your podcast today. I'm Louvenia Brevard, as you know. I am retired IRS employee, and currently I am just trying to just find my way in life right now. I am the proud grandmother of two little ones. One is 4 months old and the other is 5. And I'm actually a caregiver for the little 4-month-old one. At least 2 to 3 times a week or whatever. So that's primarily my joy, my everything. Family is everything. It just takes a village. And in this day and age, you really don't want to send your little loved ones to facilities or whatever. You want them to have that family love wrapped around them. And pretty much I like outside when it's not too hot. Georgia can get a little hot sometimes or whatever, but I love going out and just things that you never thought that you were able, because I was never like, I don't have a green thumb. Mm-hmm. So, but once I moved in the home that I grew up in to care for my parents, I just started dibbling and dabbling outside and just trying to just make it a little happy home. So I tend to do that or whatever. I'm not afraid of hard work. I've done a lot of renovations here, and I had my hand on a lot of it. So that's about it.
Well, I got to just say one thing. I know you said that's about it. However, audience that's listening and those who have heard the introduction, Louvenia worked for the Social Security Internal Revenue Service, and we definitely don't want to leave that part out because that was 34 years of your life, and growing up a single child and all those things have added to the complexity of who you are as a person. And if you'd like to share a little bit about that, people need to know what was it like working for the Internal Revenue Service quickly,
Well, 34 years is definitely a long time, but I did a little bit of my first, what I would call the real job at the Internal Revenue Service, because I came in the mailroom, believe it or not, and I was on a overnight shift. But I'm just like, I need a job. I need a job. I'm fresh out of college. I need a job. So I started there, and then I moved on. So make a long story short, I ended up in the accounting department. And in accounting, we actually, my team, we balanced the money that came in on a daily basis for the whole entire, yes. So we had reports that we had to do on a daily basis versus a monthly basis, and they had to balance to the penny. So it was very challenging, and I love that job, but our department got transferred to Kansas City.
Oh,
yes. So at that time, I'm like, okay, I'm not moving to Kansas City. I have 2 young sons, mm-hmm. and I was divorced. So I wasn't able to make that transition there, but I moved to what we call our customer, kind of like customer service. Mm-hmm. And then I went into actually installment agreements, setting up agreements for customers. And I was one of the leads. I did a lot of training, a I also was a facilitator
Wow.
as yes. So it was very challenging, but yeah, management roles and things like that. So it was a long career, but it was time to go. I always said that I wanted to retire at 56, at my first eligible retirement,
Wow.
not knowing that I would go straight into being a caregiver before I actually retired.
Wow.
So, yes,
Thank you. Thank you.
you're
Thank you for
welcome.
sharing that. It's always enjoyable learning about people and from whence they've come, and it's like a preparation ground to where you're going. So I'm going to for someone that's listening today who might be facing the same situation that we're about to talk about. Um, where should they begin? And if you could answer that, or whatever advice or whatever you think, and kind of tell how you began in this process, like when you were about to retire. So
Okay.
those that are listening, so they can hear.
Okay. Well, it all started in 2020 with COVID. So I came to my parents' house on a Monday after work and found my mother on the bathroom floor.
Mm.
So I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, Daddy, what did you hear her? Did she say anything or whatever? But she couldn't even tell me how long she had actually been on the floor. So I was able to, it was my son and I was able to get her up off the floor, and I brought her into the living room and fed them dinner and things. I was like, are you feeling bad or whatever? Are you hurting anywhere? Do we need to go to the emergency room? And at that point, it was no, no, I don't. Okay. I was like, okay, you're feeling okay. So I put them to bed that night. And I was like, okay, well, let's go ahead and get in the bed because you're probably going to be a little sore tomorrow. So the following day, I called and I couldn't get an answer. So I just kept calling and couldn't get an answer. So I told my son, I was like, we have to go. We have to go because I'm working from home. I was like, we have to go see what's going on with Nana and Grandpa. So we get here and she's sitting in the living room, normally where my father would sit in his recliner. But she couldn't reach the phone to answer it. She was like, I
Mm.
just can't get back up. I just can't get up. I was like, okay. So we get up. I get her up again. I called 911 and I told them, I was like, well, she's not moving very well. And I don't know what's going on with her. So the paramedics came out. They checked her. They checked my father. They were like, okay, both of their pressures are fine. So let's go from here. So I was like, okay. I said, well, I already scheduled her a doctor's appointment for tomorrow. So we went there on a Thursday and she saw her primary care. And he was concerned. He was like, okay, are you hurting anywhere or whatever? So they did some x-rays and they were like, well, she didn't break anything, but she's just, yeah, I was like, praise God, she's good. So we came home and my son was with with my dad or whatever, and we were eating. So he was like, I want a Whopper. So he didn't even end up eating any of the sandwich hardly or whatever. So that evening, I got him in the bed, but I had the worst headache and I couldn't get rid of it. I was like, what's going on? And now I'm like, I'm chilled. So I told my son, I said, you go home. I'm going to stay here with them. And that was on April the 30th of 2020.
Now,
So
are you in the same state?
yes, I'm like
Okay.
20
Okay.
minutes, 20 minutes
Okay.
away. So he went home and I spent the night. And that night, I just didn't feel right. So I was like, okay, my father is not helping me at all. He's not able to help me. So they came and picked him up. And it was so strange because I'm like, okay, he tried to go to the bathroom, but he couldn't make it to the bathroom. So he's on the floor and they were like, well, can you just help us? Can you get him back dressed? And I'm like, you're two men. Why can't you get him dressed?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, he doesn't have underwear why can't you do that? But they couldn't do it. So I was able to do that. I think I just blanked it all out. And so they took him in the ambulance. And this was around maybe 10:30, 11 p.m. that night. So they called me about 4 in the morning and they said, your father has COVID. So I said, okay. So they're like, okay, you're going to have to get tested, you and your mom, since you're in the house and all of that stuff. So at the time, they had set my mother up on home care.
Mm-hmm.
So home care came out and gave her the COVID test. And my son came up and stayed with her while I went to my primary care to get my COVID test or whatever. Well, we all tested positive.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is really something or whatever. And that night was the last night that my father stayed at home. For the next month, he was in the hospital. His by the last week and a half he was there, they were trying to do dialysis on him. But he kept pulling out the ports. He didn't want them. He told me he didn't want that or whatever. So they had nowhere else to put any ports. He was, they was like, we need to put him on a feeding tube because he's not eating. But to be honest, we don't think he would survive the surgery to put him on the feeding tube. So at that point, I'm like, how can you say this? Because we're actually FaceTiming with my father during this stay because no one could go to the hospitals. Mm-hmm. So my mother, she's getting a little comfort from seeing him, but, we're doing the FaceTime. And every time we're on FaceTime, he's smiling, he's talking to us. And yeah, so I felt like he was getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And then they told me that he tested negative for COVID. I was like, okay, he's doing good. He's doing good or whatever. But in the meantime, I was like, all right, but he's still in this hospital. So my primary care doctor called me. She said, you have an appointment scheduled or whatever. I called her and she was like, are you having difficulty breathing? And I'm like, no, I'm not. So she said, I can tell that you're having difficulty breathing. And I was like, no, I'm not. And, back in the beginning, they were always saying, if you can hold your breath for 10 seconds, then you're okay or whatever. Mm-hmm. So she said, hold your breath for me. So I sucked in to hold my breath. I couldn't even hold my breath for 1 second. She said, listen, young lady. She said, I don't care what you have to do, but if neither of your sons can come there to stay with your mother, you need to call 911. You need to have, and if nobody can come, then you need to tell the ambulance that they need to take both of you.
Oh my goodness.
So I was like, huh? I'm in shock now. So she's like, you need to take, but they're going to have to take both of you because she can't stay there by herself.
That's right.
And I said, okay. Okay. So I called my son. My youngest son came up and my oldest son got here. And she was like, take her to the hospital. So we get to the hospital. My son asked the admitting people, he said, do you want me to just stay out here and wait? They was like, no, you can go home because we'll let you know if you need to come back or whatever, but we're admitting her. And he's like, oh, okay, whatever. So I spent the next 4 days, 2 of them were in ICU with COVID. So at this time, the only thing I could do was like, please, Lord, do not take me. My parents need me. Lord, I'm begging, I'm praying, please don't take me. So, like I said, I was in the hospital for 4 days and
your dad is still in the hospital.
He's still in the hospital.
You're in the hospital, and
I'm in the hospital, and we're in 2 different hospitals. And mom is home, and my youngest son was taking care of his nana.
And he had COVID.
He didn't have COVID. She did, but she was asymptomatic.
Okay. Okay. Oh
So,
my goodness.
and when I tell you it takes a village, it takes a village because Denisha stepped into action and she was ordering groceries on Instacart, sending them to him. I have an aunt that lives next door to my parents, my father's sister. She would make meals and they would just leave them on front of the door for my son to, help feed his nana and all of that. So he did very well, very well. I was so proud of him.
For the audience, who's Denisha?
Denisha is my first cousin. She is my mother's sister's daughter.
So Denisha helped, and your neighbors helped, and
My
people. That's
neighbor,
why you got to be in community. You've got
you
to be in
have to
community.
be, you have to have a village, and your village will be everything to you. You can call them, you can talk to them. They can make you meals when you're feeling, not at your best. But yes, it was a village effort. So they guided him right through that process. And when I came home, um, I was like, okay. They was like, you have to take it easy because they sent me home with the in-home oxygen and the portable ones in case I needed to go out. So I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this. I don't want to do this. I don't, I don't want to do this. I'm not going anywhere. And then I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't want to wear this thing or whatever. So I tried my best. I was like, I don't want to be addicted to this oxygen. But little things, which is crazy or whatever, but I was like, Mom, I want some collard greens. And she was like, okay, or whatever. So I had ordered collard greens. So I called myself, I'm in the kitchen, I'm washing greens or whatever. And something just said, check your oxygen level. And just that little tedious task was my oxygen was going down. So I literally had to put the oxygen on. I was like, well, in order for us to have these greens,
I gotta put it on.
I've got to put this oxygen on. Yes. Wow. So it was crazy. So I came home from the hospital and I was COVID free, but then my father passed on June the 3rd. And we hadn't seen him, but we got a call and said that, he was deteriorating. He didn't want to do the dialysis. Mm-hmm. He wasn't strong enough to have the feeding tube. So I'm like, okay. And that was my first hard decision. How do I let him go? Because in my eyes, I felt like he was getting better. Mm-hmm. And the last time I saw my father, we did a FaceTime video and he's talking to us, but he would only talk. They probably had him on for like 5 minutes. And they was like, I don't know how he was able to look so good in 5 minutes. But he threw up his hand, our last FaceTime call, and he threw up his hand. He was like, bye, girls. And that was the last thing we heard. Last time we heard his voice. Last time I saw his face. And when he did it, I actually screenshot the call. I did a screenshot. So I have that screenshot of him waving goodbye to us. And it was crazy because, they always say, he takes a life, he gives a life. Mm-hmm. So this was on a Monday. And on that conversation, I told him, I was like, guess what, Daddy? And he's like, what? I said, you're going to be a great grandpa. Wow. Oh my and my oldest son, yes. And my daughter-in-law were expecting, and they had just found out. And I was like, you're going to be a great grandpa. And he had the biggest smile on his face. And because he absolutely loved children. All of his little nieces and nephews, they were like, we have to go see Uncle Harvey. We have to go see Uncle Harvey. Anytime they were here or at their grandparents' house down next door, they always wanted to come and spend time with my dad. Yes. So, but it was, I mean, during that time, you could not, when he passed away, we couldn't even have his funeral until almost the end of June because everybody has to test negative for COVID before we could even make the arrangements.
Really?
Yes. So about the third week in June was when we were able to have the actual funeral.
So everybody in the family, everybody that is preparing for the funeral, or everybody that's going to attend the funeral
Everybody that was preparing the funeral had to be
had to be
negative.
negative.
But yes, of course, nobody wanted to come out with COVID anyway.
No, they didn't. They did not.
So it
So
was definitely an ordeal, but I felt like my father was a very private person.
like most men, they
Yeah,
don't
he's
want to
very,
share that.
very, very private. And, he was like, okay, he sat here. I used to say he sat up on his hill because the house sits on a hill. I said, and he didn't bother anybody. He's just here. He didn't do a lot of socializing out, you know, family wise, of course, we socialized with family. We took family vacations every year, but we were always going to families' houses. So, we're different states or wherever they may be. But that's how he was. And I said, I like to think that he would have loved this funeral.
So what should families watch for to ensure that their loved ones are receiving the proper care? Because your mother was in one hospital and your dad was in another. Your mom was at home, but you were in the hospital. Now you have your sons who are, so that was amazing for them to be able to help. But how do you ensure that your dad was getting the proper care? And just not your dad, you.
It, at that time, Pam, I couldn't ensure. The only thing I could go by is what they're telling me. I'm like, well, did you try this? Have you tried that or whatever? Because you couldn't, I couldn't physically lay eyes on him aside from those FaceTime calls. So it was a lot. It was a lot. And then, it's me, and I'm like, what's going on here? All I know is they're giving me these shots in my stomach every night to keep me from developing blood clots.
Oh,
You don't get any rest in the hospital. They
no,
had
you
some
don't.
kind of
You don't.
some kind of machine in there, and I guess that was like some type of air purifier. And you don't see anybody. It was like a cold. When they transported me to my room, we did not meet a single soul on the hallway. It was almost like a deserted hospital.
It probably was.
Yes, it was deserted, and you just don't know. And they're coming in like every morning around 4:30 in the morning. They're drawing like 8 vials of blood for me, and I was like, oh my god, I can't.
That's crazy.
I can't. I was like, how much more are you going to take? And then my daughter-in-law, who happens to be a nurse, I was telling her they were trying to do something, and I forget what she calls it, but they were extracting it from my wrist. So they have to go very deep in order to do that. And I right off the top of my head, I don't remember what it is, but they couldn't do it. The lady that was trying to do it on my right hand, she couldn't do it. So they end up having to do it on my left. And when they did it, when I tell you it was so painful, I said, are you in the bone? What are you doing or whatever? And my wrist hurt for about a month after that ordeal. But when I came home, I was just so happy to be home. And then I just wanted to go back into caregiver mode of taking care of my mother. And my family's like, sweetie, you have to rest too because you can't do everything.
No,
and I'm like,
you cannot.
yeah, I know.
And that's one of the things, Lavinia, that is really hard for most people is that, especially, I'm going to say women. I'm not going to say, men don't support, but I'm going to say women. We're the nurturers, we're the caregivers, and we try to take care of everyone else. And when it's time that we need the nurturing, we don't try to completely heal, we say, okay, that's enough. I need to get up and get this and do that. And how did you do that? How did you rest, or did you rest? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you that rest thing is yeah. There's not much rest.
No.
Not much rest at all. You know, you're just thinking about things because at that time, here I am, I'm trying to do everything. You know, plan my father's funeral, in
Mm.
which, like I said, I did for his funeral, I did everything. I wrote the obituary, I wrote the program, I did everything. And I was like, okay, did this. So after the funeral, you know, I'm still trying to be strong for my mother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there would be nights where I'm in my bed and I just have tears rolling down on my pillow because I'm missing my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Or I would take showers and I would do my grieving in the shower because I just didn't want to upset her, you know. And sometimes she would sit and I would see her tear up and things like that. And I was like, it's okay. It's okay. But you know, at that, now that I think about it, I'm like, maybe she was wondering why I wasn't grieving.
Mm-hmm.
But I was, you know, I was doing it alone. I'm an only child and I just don't mind being alone. I like being alone.
Yeah.
So I love my family. I love hanging out with my family or whatever. But you know, people say, um, do you miss being? And I was like, I love living alone. But yes, when I'm with my family, I love my family.
That's
When
right.
I
And
hang
then
out with
when
my
it's time,
family, I love my family. Yes, but I'm not that person that has to be going on the go all the time, constantly, or whatever,
mm-hmm.
feeling like I'm trying to just do something to keep my mind busy. I'm not like that. I can sit on my tablet, I can put jigsaw puzzles together, I can do mahjong, I can do anything. I love movies. I just
and and see, and that, you know, you hit on something that's so powerful because, you know, being an only child, you had to figure out how to make yourself happy. Whereas the ones who have siblings, depends on the family structure. You know, you're used to having siblings around, and then as you get older, you know, maybe dynamics may change from what they were when you were younger. But as the only child, when you think about it, you had to face all those family decisions by yourself in terms of
right.
your dad. So I want to ask you,
Do you
how.
mind if I let this little he's getting restless in his cage?
Oh no, it's fine. No, no, it's fine.
I'm sorry about
No,
that.
it's okay.
I put him
We'll
in and
edit
he's
that.
like, I've had enough. I can't do it. But yes, making all those decisions, you know, because my mother just wasn't able to do that.
Exactly. And so
She's grieving because she's grieving her husband. They were married for 55 years.
I was going to ask you that. Oh, that's a long time.
Yes.
And actually, it sounds like my husband's parents, they were married 66 years. His mother passed first, and we came back to California. And then 6 months later, all of a sudden, and it was right at during COVID time, and we think, well, I'll just leave what we think. And then he passed away 6 months later, and it was such a shock, you know. And I'm going to say to people, when people have been married for a long time, you don't, that oneness. I don't care if you're on the opposite spectrum with your mate, or you could be arguing every day, you know. But if you've been married that long, you will have become one, and they, you know, and that's a little difficult to lose your partner.
And
It really is.
that was number one reason too. I was like, even if my mother gets better, you know, from that fall, once she starts feeling better and she's able to function on her own, my fear was they have been together for so long that I'm going to lose her.
That's right.
Because, they'll tell you a lot of times that when they've been married that long, when one dies, the other one is not too far behind.
Exactly. And that's
So, yeah, so that was a fear. And, but at that point, I said, okay. Once she started getting better, I was working I started back. I didn't actually go back to work. I took off from April 30th and I went back the Monday after Labor Day in September. So I said, I know people are like, gosh, she's out a long time. But I was like, not only am I grieving, but I also had COVID. I said, you don't understand the toll that it took on my body.
Physical body.
Yes. So when I actually went back to work, they're like, okay, she's back. She's back. She's back. I was like, I'm not back, but a few months.
I'm here.
Because become my birthday in December, I will be retiring. And I knew that because that was my plan all along. I was like, I'm going to retire at 56. And if I'm taking care of my mother, I'm taking care of my mother. I didn't want to move her in my house because I'm like, she's already, hip problems, leg problems. But also in my house has stairs.
Right. And
so
then
I
plus
just
the surroundings of her own home.
Oh, right. And so I talked with my son and my daughter-in-law. I was like, they were living in Midtown. I was like, how would you all like to live in my house? And just stay there or whatever. And I'm going to move in with Nana. It's ranch style. And we can go from there. And I'll just adapt. So they're like, okay. So everything, that aspect of it worked out just fine. Just fine. But my mother, and then I had to stop myself because I came in and this house was built in like the 60s. So I'm like, there are a whole lot of things I want to change in here. I want a whole lot of change. And speaking of dementia, that's when I started noticing her memory. Because I started making changes in the house or whatever. And yes. And she sometimes I would just catch her just looking around. And I was like, okay. She's like, she doesn't know where I said, what's wrong? She's just looking around. I said, well, do you like it? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, did she really like it? Or is she just saying that to please me? But then, so we finished out the year and I thought we were doing really well in 2020. I said, okay, we're doing good. She's eating better now. She's gaining weight. We went for her yearly checkup in January of 2021. And the doctor was like, oh, she's gained about 10 pounds. I said,
wow.
Oh, great. That's great. So we were getting ready for bed one night. And at that time, she was walking with a cane. She got up, but she would always, and I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember those wooden yardsticks?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So she had one of those. So the dog was here. So if he dropped something or his toy or whatever, she tried to move it with that yardstick to get out of the way. So this particular night, she thought she had her cane in her hand, but she actually had the yardstick. So when she got up and stood to turn, it broke and she went down. Hardwood floors.
Oh.
Broke her hip.
Oh my goodness.
Broke her hip. So 81-year-old lady breaks her hip. So I was like, okay, we're still in COVID. You don't know what's going on or whatever. So they put the rod in her hip and they sent her to rehab. So she was in rehab for a month. And so when I went to pick her up, every day, though, she was in rehab, she cried. I don't like it here. I want to come home. I was like, Mom, you've got to do everything they tell you. That's going to get you home faster. You got to do this, you got to do that, or whatever. And towards like the last week, I didn't talk to her every day. And my village was like, how's mom today? I said, I couldn't call her because I said, little do you all know, I may be finding out how she's doing or whatever, but she's crying the whole call.
Oh,
And I couldn't take it.
yeah.
I couldn't listen to her cry anymore. She's crying, I'm crying. I just couldn't do it. So I was like, you got to be strong, you got to be strong. But she's coming home, and they called me on a Friday, and they were like, she's coming home on Monday. They called me on a Thursday. They said she's coming home on Monday. I was like, okay. So at that point, we had a conventional tub. It's a tub. So I
Yeah.
called my cousin, who was also my contractor, helping me to redo things inside the house. I was like, your auntie will be home on Monday. So he's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
or whatever. So 10 o'clock Friday morning, he's at my house. He's like, let's go. I said, where are we going? We're going to pick out things for the bathroom. We're,
Wow.
we're going to redo the bathroom this weekend. I was like, we're going to what? He's like, we're redoing the bathroom. So him and his brother, which are Denisha's brothers, Derek and Derwin, they came and ripped out the entire bathroom, installed a stand-up shower,
Wow.
and yeah, they did it in a weekend. They started on Friday, it was finished Sunday night.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
See that. Mm,
So, like I said, a village.
it
It
is.
takes a
It's a
village.
village.
They was like, oh
But
yeah, you got
I
to make
gotta
sure
say
it's
something,
okay for auntie to come home.
Lavinia. I need to say something. It's also about who you are. And I don't want to miss that a lot because you are just, how do I say, you are a person who people can gravitate toward. You have such a wonderful spirit. And this is the thing about being in community and having your village. You send out, you know, who you are, your spirit connects with people who have a hearty spirit, or some people say energy, whatever they're saying. But the point is, you hold a mirror up. And I'm listening to your cousin said, all right, let's get on it. And they went ahead and did what they need to do for your mom. And I applaud them as well. But it does take a village. But I also do not want to lose the part who you are,
Mm-hmm.
who you are as an individual in terms of, I'm going to take care of mom, I'm going to take care of dad. I don't want to forget that because there's something special and gifted about you. And so a lot of times we have to make so many decisions, and it's like everything's coming at you at one time, and here's your family saying, we're here and we're going to support you.
Mm-hmm.
But it also starts with you, because you can say, no, I got it, and pretty soon people just gonna like, okay, well, you got it, go on, do what you need to do.
You're absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Because when you
absolutely
seem
correct.
like you're invincible and you got it all covered, pretty soon people just stay away, even though they want to help, because you say, no, I got it, and sometimes we don't got it at all.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. You're right. Hey, and it falls back on that sleep. Like, when do you sleep? I've never really been a morning person. Um, so it was definitely a challenge. And
Mm-hmm.
thank God my mother was not really a morning person either.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay, it's okay to get up at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock and make breakfast for her. And she's good with that because that's when she wants to get up. But yeah, she came home, and we went from there. But like I said, it was a lot. And then um, we had a good home care team. She had an occupational therapist. She had the physical therapist. They came in. They were great. They helped out a whole lot. Uh,
So let me ask you, how do you keep all that together? So if I'm somebody listening to you, how do I cope with all this? How do I do all this? How did you do all this?
It's, I mean, you have to listen to everybody, like her insurance or whatever. They're like, we're going to provide you with this. So you'll have people reach out to you and they'll tell you things like, um, we're going to come in, we're going to do an evaluation with her. We want to see where she's at so we'll know, how to report. So they'll come in um, and teach her things that will help you. And it's also teaching you too how to handle them. So the physical therapist would come in like twice a week. The occupational therapist would come in once a week, and they're there to help you to teach them how, maybe if they need to learn how to redress themselves, how to brush their teeth, how to put their socks on. Have little devices that they can put on their, like a stick to pull their
Yeah,
sock up
full
and things
stop.
like that. And then occupational therapists, they will do exercises with them, but then they also leave you printouts of how you can continue those exercises once they're gone. They're like, we still want you to work on these, so that your body, your muscles aren't just deteriorating in the process or whatever. So we're going to work on these. And they got to the point where, they had her outside walking with her walker. So that was good. Her doctor was like, you know what, Miss Jennings, for an 81-year-old, you are healing nicely. He said, you're healing better than some 40-year-olds. I can tell you that. So, but she was always pretty active. So, and that was another hard thing because by her being active, it was hard for me to see her when she wasn't active. And when she started to deteriorate, like I said, she would look around and I started, I knocked walls down and things like that. And she's looking around or whatever. And she's, where am I? And that's when I knew. I said, oh no, I got to stop.
Right.
Can't do too much more. But by then I had done quite a bit or whatever. But what I didn't do was mess with her bedroom.
That's good.
And I was like, I need her to, once she gets in her bedroom, that she knows where she is or whatever, because she would always say, where am I? I said, you're at home. You're at home. I said, do you think this little dog would be in a facility? And she was like, oh, okay, or whatever. And my dog used to want to jump up on top of her recliner and lay down at the top, like he was protecting her. That's that's what he did or whatever. So I know he was probably grieving also. He's like, where's my nap?
That is so true.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you, what are some of the biggest emotional challenges that you or families face when caring for someone with dementia? What are some of those issues?
Some of your challenges, sometimes you have to just go with the flow. You can correct them, but you don't want to do it to a point where you lose them. You like, I said, oh, I'll say things like, you're at home. I'm taking care of you. You don't have to worry about anything. I'm always here for you and I'll be here for you. So my thing was, I didn't want to leave her with strangers.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted my face to always be there, and she knew that, she's safe. And yeah, she was, but it wasn't a lot in the beginning. But as she got older, a couple years older, I'm like, okay, now I start to see it a little more. Mm-hmm. She was never the wanderer that wanted to go outside and wander away, and I was thankful for that. Mm-hmm. But she would sit here sometimes, and I can remember a time, and this was actually after she was on hospice care, that I was in the shower and she's screaming for me to come. And she's like, that man keeps staring at me. And I'm like, what man? What man do you? He won't stop staring at me. And it was actually, I had a picture of my father on the wall in front of her. So it was my dad.
And she didn't know who it
And
was.
she didn't know it. No, she did not know it. So I was like, Mom, that's dad. That's your husband or whatever. He wouldn't hurt you for nothing in this world or whatever. And she calmed down and was like, okay, it's a thing or whatever. But there was a lot, like I said, to get to that point. But in 2024, she got sick on me. And they told me, it was in August, they told me she had pneumonia. And I said, okay. So we're going to the hospital. So we get to the hospital. They was like, oh, she's got pneumonia. She's got some sinus issues. And she's always had allergies. So we were in the hospital. So she lost some of her strength because that's when I knew, like, you recognize, what your parents' baseline is.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you're paying
attention, because she, like, all that week, I said, Mom, you're getting weaker and weaker. She's like, no, I'm getting her up out of the bed because I always helped her get out of the bed. I stood behind her and the walker as she's walking to the bathroom to get her in there and to get her out of the bathroom. I'm always there doing all of that. But that last day I tried to get her up, I couldn't get her out of the bed. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, Mom, I've got to call 911. I can't get you up. I said, I just can't do it. I can't lift you by myself and hold you up to get you out of here. I said, it's one thing for me to stand behind you and hold you up, but all your dead weight to be on me, I couldn't do it. Yeah. I couldn't do it. And then in the midst of all of that, I had hernia surgery.
Oh, yeah.
Myself. So yes, it was definitely an ordeal. But again, my neighbor, my mom used to call her sister. But when I tell you, when I had the hernia surgery, she was here breakfast, lunch, and dinner with food. She told my children, she was like, don't worry about it. She's like, Pat got it. Pat has got it or whatever. But she came over for breakfast. She brought breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a whole week.
What a blessing.
I said it's just a blessing. You just
I'm telling you, the community. But I want you, when you were talking about hospice. So at some point, many families must consider this, that it is what they're going to have to consider, and which can be very emotional. I mean, it's an emotional step that people really don't want to do. So my question to you is, how do families know when it's time to consider hospice, and what services and supplies does hospice typically provide? So it's basically, let's start with, how do they know when it's time?
You will get, like, my mother went to, once she had the pneumonia, she was released to a nursing facility, which was also a rehab facility. So they're supposed to be rehabbing her, and she's deteriorating. Mm-hmm. And this is what I wanted to put emphasis on, is for families, when you put your loved one in a nursing home, don't leave your loved one there to just, don't say, oh, we're going to go see mom on Friday or whatever. No. You need to have her somewhere that you're able to pop in at any given time. I mean, don't let them know your schedule. Don't do any of that. Just pop in at any time. So my mother is at this facility, and I'm there every day, sometimes twice a day. How is she doing? How is her rehab going? This. Well, she would go through periods, and I'm taking food to her where she doesn't want to hardly eat. She's not doing that. I'm like, you're not eating the food. I can understand you maybe not want to eat their food, but I'm bringing you food every day too. And you don't want to eat my food.
Mm.
And she went through that, and I'm like, you're getting weaker and weaker. And the facility, they were like, yeah, your mom didn't want to take her medicine today. I'm like, what do you mean she didn't want to take her medicine? I said, well, what did you do with it? Well, we threw it away. Okay, my mother has high blood pressure. Why would you throw her medication away? And things like that. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, did you take her blood pressure to see if her blood pressure was high or anything like that? Oh, absolutely not.
Yes.
I haven't done a thing or whatever. So you're going in there and you're saying, okay, this is her water cup. It says 7 a.m., but it's still at the very top. I can't even tell if she's even taking a sip out of it. So my mother was there for like a month, almost a month. So at that time, the insurance is like, okay, well, you're not getting any better. We're not going to keep paying for you to do rehab if you're not making any progress. So I went in there and I was like, okay, she's not making any progress. And at that point, they start sending you out what they call a numbing, where you have to justify or put in a rebuttal why you think your mother should still continue care. So wow. that comes at you like once a week. Sometimes it's even fewer than less than a week.
And that comes.
Okay, you're faced with another numbing. You got to call this number and say why you don't think they should release your parent. But the end game, I just felt like the end game of the nursing facility rehab was not to really rehab your patient, but to have them as a long-term care patient. Mm-hmm. You're looking for those long-term care patients that hopefully you can get something out of. Mm-hmm. Because if that patient has a home or anything like that, they're trying to take your home.
Yes.
Or they're trying to charge you over $10,000 a month for care and things like that.
Now, when you say, because I want to be crystal clear, when you say who is trying to take the home?
Just the company itself, because if you
go in reimbursement
for reimbursement for their care, because when they're in long-term care, you're responsible for their care. So if they're getting a Social Security check, then they're going to take the Social Security check. But if she owns property or anything like that, then they want that also. Oh. And this is for care. And I'm like, it's not worth that. No. I was like, even $13,000 or so a month, it's not worth that because you're not doing anything. And not to say that all caregivers are like that, but a lot of caregivers out there, the CNAs or whatever, there are some good ones. I will say we've met some, but there are some that are there just for a paycheck, and they could care less about your loved one. They're not going in there. They're not changing their diapers or whatever the case may be, making sure that they're dry, making sure that they're eating or whatever, because I watched them and I said, you come in here, you're delivering her food, you lift up the cover, she hasn't eaten anything. Who are you reporting to? She's not eating, she's not drinking. What's really going on? So I told the head nurse, I was like, I need you to send my mother out to the hospital because something is going on. She's staring into space. She's so weak or whatever. And what you're doing is you're wasting my rehab days, because regardless of whether or not you're rehabbing her that day, those days are dropping off of her count of what she has available for that quarter or whatever, the situation may be. And that particular day, it was in September, they sent my mother out. We get to the hospital. She has a severe UTI. She's severely dehydrated. She has a severe sinus infection. And I was like, okay, or whatever. And when I tell you, Pamela, that I have never seen urine that thick in my whole entire life, because they had to put a catheter in her just to see it, and I was like, what color is that? And this is crazy. So she was in the hospital for over a week. They sent her back to the rehab because she's, weak or whatever. But I'm like, the little time that she's in the hospital, their rehab was, I felt, was more intense than what she was getting in that rehab
That's
facility.
right. That's right.
So I said, this is absolutely crazy. I said, when she had her hip, we did the in-home, and then we also went to just a rehab facility. When we went to a rehab facility, I used to take her, 3 days a week, and she would be there for an hour. And that got her back up on her feet from a hip surgery. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, this is not working for me. So like I said, she went back to that rehab for 1 week exactly. And in that week, I didn't see any change. All I saw was deterioration even more. Mm-hmm. And at that point was when we went back to the emergency room, and they did what they could or whatever, and they was like, yeah, she's going down. She's deteriorating. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that. I was like, I can see that. And I'm like, she's deteriorating. And they wanted to, one of them talked about a feeding tube. And the insurance didn't want to cover a feeding tube, but I was like, if she can make it through surgery for a feeding tube, then I want that. I said, I want that. I'm trying to prolong her life. I'm trying to get her back to, hopefully, that she'll start eating on her own. And I'm just trying to do that or whatever. And, and then I found out, I was always thinking hospice, okay, they're getting ready to die in any minute.
Right.
Because when they moved my dad to hospice, he died in less than 24 hours. So when the word hospice came up to me, I'm like, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready. I'm not. So then you find out a lot of things or whatever. They was like, hospice doesn't mean that you're about to pass away right away or whatever. They said because she has dementia, she can be put up under hospice care. Mm-hmm. And I said, really? And they were like, yes. And lo and behold, my daughter-in-law had just started working as a hospice nurse.
Wow. So moving her out of rehabilitation, that really wasn't rehabbing her. Mm-hmm. And then you had to make a decision to move her to hospice care. But then she had to reach some certain level, or certain things had to be in place. If you could tell us. No.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. I'm trying to tell the dog he's trying to go out.
I mean, if you need to take him out, I'll edit this part.
I'm just gonna let it. Okay, I'm back.
Okay, because there's so many things that I don't want to forget to ask you, but you had to make a decision to remove your mother from the rehab facility to the hospice. And so I was asking, like, what are the qualifications, or does she have to, I don't know what that would be.
What her qualification was, that she had dementia.
Okay.
So they're like, with dementia, you're gonna steady decline. We don't know what rate you're gonna decline, but we know it's gonna happen. Mm-hmm. So she actually entered hospice, and then you have the choice of hospice in a facility, or you can do hospice at home.
Can you repeat that, because people need to really hear
that?
Okay,
you can have your loved one in a hospice facility, a caregiver's facility or whatever, where they're there and they stay there. Okay. I chose hospice at home.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, no, I want to take care of my mother. Yes, I wanted to take care of her. So I chose hospice at home. And they would have I had previously, like when she went in the hospital in August, I had purchased a hospital bed because her bedroom was small. So I was like, I'm going to purchase this hospital bed that I can do this and I can navigate. But I later found out that hospice would have provided that
Oh,
if I
wow.
didn't. So they provided,
So
they would have
hospice,
provided the bed
they provide a bed in home. If
in
you're going to
home.
do this in home, people, okay.
So they provided a bed.
Mm-hmm.
They also provided her diapers, wipes, any I used to use a cream on her bottom when I changed her. They provided that. They provided her formula for her feedings.
Mm-hmm.
They provided all of that.
All
So
that.
I got I would get a shipment once a month.
Wow.
So the only time I had to purchase, the only thing that I really ran out of sometimes was wipes. So if you run out, you can purchase those.
So,
But yes, they provided all of that. And then when she developed, um, she had like a bed sore. They had wound care comes
mm-hmm.
in. Wound care came in. Um, they provided all the bandage, all the medications, and any of that. They also, your medications are turned over to them, so that is supplied
Wow.
through, yeah, through hospice. Mm.
So, so you can do this at home, but say I work every day. I just can't do that. So my only option is to put them in a hospice program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So thinking about that, how important are advanced directives?
Very important.
Okay. Because that was
Very,
the
very,
one question I
very,
wanted to
and that's
circle.
just that's for anything. They will ask you that even if you're in like a nursing facility, does your mother
Mhm.
have an advanced directive?
Okay. I don't, this is interesting because people really don't like to talk about it,
No,
not just for their parents, but for themselves. And I
right.
don't care if you're 30, 40 years old, you need to have an advance directive because nobody knows the day or the hour. And is hopefully we all live for a very long time. But to ensure that these things are in order, is imperative for us to do. And I guess the other part is that you were blessed to be retired and have your mom in home and to do that hospice care. But how do you think people are uh, who can't do that, and the guilt that people might feel or the decisions that they need to make? Can you speak on any of that? That would be helpful.
For me, um, definitely it would. I think they would feel guilt because I mentioned earlier is I didn't want my mother to be around unfamiliar faces without
Mm-hmm.
me. Um, she would always do better when I was around. Mm-hmm. So, but if you're at that point where you can't be there, all the time, and I understand that because some people, you have to work. It
Mm-hmm.
is what it is. But there are some programs out there also where they will pay the caregiver
To take care.
to take care of their loved one. I reached out probably once, and I was told that because she was under Medicare, that I wasn't eligible to receive this. But this was actually when she was in hospice. I'm like, I've been doing this since 2020. We're in 2024 now, so I'm like, I'm not even really thinking about this. And
Right.
right, I was like, I'm okay. I'm taking care of, me and her. We're
Mm-hmm.
good. And like I said, I was just lucky to do that. But when you're in hospice, don't it's a lot of work. It's not
I
it's
can
not it's not
imagine.
I'll say it's not for the weak because in my mother's instance, like I said, she had that bed sore. It's a matter of they want you to turn her like every couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not really getting any sleep because
You
you're
have to turn.
in and out of the room or whatever. I kept a baby monitor in her room so that if she tried to move or if she needed me, call my name or whatever, she could do that. Can we pause? I'm going to let him back
Yes.
in.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Yes.
we were talking about like some of the guilt
Yes.
or whatever. I'll never forget my very first CNA that came out, first hospice appointment. And she told me, she said, Louvenia, I want you to go in the living room, make yourself a cup of coffee, sit down. I'm going to give your mother a bath and it's going to be fine. And I was like, I mean, I can help you. That nurturer in me wanted to help.
Mm-hmm.
She said, no, ma'am. She said, no, ma'am. She said, you go. I need you to just go and relax.
Wow.
And I said, okay, don't get too excited yet, though, because that didn't last long for me because I just felt like I needed to be
You
in
need to
there.
be doing something. And
I
that
needed
brings,
to be there. I needed
but
to be there. But it was, I mean, I was amazed at what she did or whatever. She literally gave my mother a bath, changed her sheets,
mm-hmm.
shampooed her hair, and did all of that. And when I went back in there, I was like, hey, I was like, Mom, how do you feel? Good. She was good. She was in her right mind that day. I was like, oh, okay. Everything went fine. She's like, yes. And that was the lady, that was her first and only visit.
Wow.
And then we got switched to, I guess, our permanent CNA, which was wonderful also. But I
Okay.
always
That's
used to
good.
tell, yeah, I always used to tell her she would come or whatever. I would help her, change the sheets or whatever. I'm like, with both of us doing this, we can get this done really, really quick.
See,
And
and that's the thing, and that's where I'm going next, is because one of the aspects of caregiving is so often overlooked is the mental health of the caregiver, the mental health, the physicality of the caregiver, because we are nurturers by nature. However, if your vessel is not filled, you can't help anybody else. So I'm going to ask you about that, because a lot of times we don't think about the emotionality and we're overwhelmed, but we won't take a break. So tell us about that, and what kind of emotional toll does this all take on you, the individual?
definitely an emotional toll. And like I said, that guilt aspect, because if I wasn't there, I would feel guilty. There
Mm-hmm.
were times I had to step out to the grocery store or whatever, and I'm like, gosh, I'm feeling guilty. But I had a camera in her room. I will pull out that camera. I'm standing in the checkout line. I'm looking to see what she's doing. I knew she couldn't get out of bed or anything. I wasn't worried about that. But I wanted to make sure everything was okay. So I'm looking at that. And emotionally, I don't know. People would offer and say, well, I'll come and sit with your mom. Um, and while you can go out and get a break, fresh air, whatever. And I'd be like, they're like, just call me. Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, I know you
I
didn't
never
call.
called. I never called anybody. It was rare that I went out or whatever. I just felt like I needed to be there all the time.
Mm.
all the time. And even when, like you said, when you're sleeping or whatever, get the couple of hours or whatever, and I just don't sleep a
So,
lot.
so can I say, if we look back, 2020 is always hindsight. Would you have done anything different for you in terms of letting other people to help you in some small way? Maybe not all the way, but like the CNA, what is she, a CNA? What
Mm-hmm.
she did the first time, and she told you, no, go on over in the room and I'll take care of this. Would you have done anything different looking back?
I don't think so.
No.
I really don't, because in your mind you're thinking at some point she's gonna be gone,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not gonna have her here. And being an only child, I was always very close to my parents. I talked to them every day,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, or whatever. Even if it was just a how y'all doing today or what's going on, it was just something or whatever. But I talked to them every day.
Wow.
And I tell my sons now, I'm like, you should call and check on your mom every day. Every, I said, because you never know what's going on
It is
or
so
whatever.
true.
I said, it's just too much. And I was like, please share your location with me so that I know where you are.
And
It's
see,
just
they think, look at it differently though. They
mom's
do.
being
Not,
nosy.
yeah, our generation is totally different. It is just different, But I want to ask you, after caregiving ends, many people experience a very difficult kind of grief. Did you have that kind of experience? Why do why do some caregivers feel lost after their parent passes?
My mother passed in May 13th of 2025. And that loss is just there. I I I really can't describe it. You don't, people say there's no time limit on grieving.
Mm-mm.
There are some days that are better than others. And I was telling, I was actually talking to my cousin, and I said, it was a couple of weeks ago, I said, I'm having a hard time this week. And she said, what's wrong? And I said, because I don't know what it is, but ever since my mother passed, I dream about my parents. And sometimes it's both of them, sometimes it's one or the other or whatever. I said, but I dream about them at least once a week. They're in my dreams. And people are like, I don't even remember my dreams. I'm like, I remember, because they're in my dreams. Sometimes I'm young, sometimes I'm old. Sometimes I have kids, sometimes I don't. It's different or whatever. I said, but I dream about them. And I said, I'm feeling lost, real lost this week. I said, because that hasn't happened at all this week at all. And she's like, huh? And I was like, not a single dream, not one or whatever. And I'm struggling with that. And she said, huh? I said, I don't know. I just feel like they're reaching out to me just to check on me. They're like, how's she doing? We know she's by herself, at night or whatever, but I don't know. I just feel like I need to see them in my dreams in order to, I don't know, function.
Like everything's okay. I get that.
Everything is, to know that everything is okay. And then I want them, it's like I feel like they need to see that I'm okay, but I need to see them. I don't know what it is.
No, I can't say, but how you're saying about your dream is how I talk about my mother every day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day about something. Oh, that's a word mama used, or you know what, mama told us this, or she said if you have 5 good friends in a lifetime. So to keep her memory alive, and it tells me how grateful I am and how blessed I was at to have a mother growing up to be able to give me that stuff. So when it comes to the dream, I get that because you could ask my children, the grandchildren, they know all the mama isms. And so, that's how I keep her alive. And if I don't say something about something she taught us, or here's a picture of mama, whatever, it feels strange. So to keep her alive, I talk about her. And I recently lost my oldest sister last year, and it was very difficult, very, very difficult. So I'm living this through you, but I'm also living it through my own experience of how my mother had dementia, Alzheimer's, and how my sister, not my oldest, but my next sister, became her guardian. And my sister had to work all the time. My mother would go out and get lost, and then they'd have to call her and she'd come back. So she knew that she could not work and leave my mother alone. And she put her like in a daycare, but my mother didn't like that. So eventually she ended up putting her in a home, and my mom deteriorated so quickly.
So
And then
fast.
and she's in Las Vegas, and she'd say, I want to go home. And we were in California. So it brings up a lot, and I don't want to like get emotional on it. So, so
I
it is, I'm
I
telling you
understand.
people, it is not an easy task when it comes to your parents and the decisions that you have to make. And I applaud you. I do, Lavinia. I applaud you because you were the only one making decisions and all of the things that you navigated. And I applaud you. And people, you need to hear and pay attention. This is going to come forth for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't want to, I don't want to not say things, but I got to ask some more questions.
That that's fine, but you're right. You speak of. I know I still speak of my mother in present tense sometimes or whatever. I'm here alone at nighttime. I can be, just scrolling the internet and I find something funny and I'm laughing out loud and I'll be like, I'm gonna wake mama up. Things like that. I'm like,
Excuse me.
my mom would have said this, and my mom said that, and my dad did this, and yeah, it's definitely challenging at times,
It
but
is. So I'm going to ask you, and I looked at the time and I said, "Oh my goodness, this is wonderful." Because this is where we live. But I want to ask you if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners and our viewers when it comes to families caring for aging parents or loved ones facing serious illness. What would it be?
um, probably I was like, spend time with your parents as much as you can, because especially when they have dementia, because they're going to be good days and they're going to be bad days. And I would hate for you to miss out on those good days, because there will be days when they don't know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my mother, the last time she was in the hospital, the doctor asked her who I was, and she said, "That's my mom."
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I got really, really scared. And I knew at that point that we were going downhill. But I was fortunate enough to have her from October until May.
Wow.
So, and I thank God for that. I was like, another Christmas, another Thanksgiving. Um, but pay close attention to your parents, um, that you can tell when things aren't quite right,
Exactly.
especially with dementia, because if you're talking to them on the phone and they're asking you the same question,
Mm-hmm.
over, or they can't remember something or whatever that you know they should remember, listen for those warnings or whatever, because those are just warnings, and you need to start trying to get everything in order, um, because you just don't want to,
Nope.
you don't want to miss out. You don't want to get to that point where all of a sudden they don't know you.
That's right. That's right. And even if you have to repeat yourself, I'm going to ask for everyone to think about have patience. Because my mother used to say, "What is your name?" She would say to my husband, "What is your name, young man?" And he would say, I'm Melvin, ma'am." And that's what we do. We just repeat, repeat. Where today young people have no patience. And I'm saying
No
y'all
patience.
need to get some patience, because if you say, "Well, you already told me that," that's the wrong answer. That's the wrong answer. If I, and I tell that to my kids or my grandkids, especially my grandkids, say, "Grandma, you watched The Woman King already, and I'm going to watch it again." And so, that is one thing. But if I don't know your name and I'm saying, "What? Who are you? What grandchild are you?
Yes,
What's your
yes.
name?" Those are the signs, and we have to pay attention. And it, I may be laughing and everything, but it's no laughing matter. It really isn't.
It,
And Lavinia said something that is so, so powerful. Spend time with your parents, get to know their baseline. And parents who are the older parents, start telling your children about your health history so that they know. And they can look for things as they grow up. Our parents didn't share a lot of their history.
right.
We have to take it upon ourselves to know their history and ask questions. You have to be the little investigator, actually.
Right. And
Right?
let your children spend time. Like my mother absolutely loved my granddaughter. And again, we take one, we give one. She died in May. My grandson was born in October. So, but I told her, I was like, Claire's having a baby, and I put her hand on Claire's stomach. And I was like, yes, these are the things. But she would light up when my granddaughter came in the room. She just, hi, and I have videos that I watch with the two of them together. I'm like, take videos. If you don't live close to your parents, this technology we have today, FaceTime, so that these kids know what their grandparents look like, or great grands, whatever the case may be. But cherish those memories.
I love
Absolutely.
it.
Because when they're gone, they're gone. I still talk to mine like they're here, but they're gone.
Thank you.
And I just need those dreams though. I need those dreams to keep happening, because I just want to see them in action,
In
or I look
action.
at
I was going
videos.
to say
Yes.
that, in action.
I look at
So, Lavinia, I just want to thank you for sharing your conversation. This has helped families and to understand that they are not alone in their experience. And you have your insight today will help many people, and to remind them of some of the things that they are going to have to navigate difficult decisions and conversations with their loved ones. So, thank you so much for being here. It's greatly
okay.
appreciated.
One last thing, and then I swear I'm quiet. I'm not gonna say anything. Those hard decisions, when it's time to let go, please tell your loved one that it is okay.
Mm,
It's okay for them to transition, because I just felt like my mother was waiting on that approval from me,
wow.
that I was going to be okay. Because a week before she passed, she was looking around and she said, "Where?" And I said, "You're at home."
Mm.
And it was like her body just sighed. And then
She could
the
let
next
go.
day, the next day she had a seizure that I thought it took her out of here, but it didn't. But from that point on, she did not say another word. So yes, make sure that you let them know that you love them, and it's okay, that you're going to be okay for them to go home. Mhm.
Thank you. That was powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you
so
Thank
much
you.
for having me, Pamela.
You are so welcome. It is my pleasure. Have a good evening.
You
and
too.
Remember, everyone, subscribe. Talk to you soon.